Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the WE Knives Diatomic. Definitely one of the strangest knives that WE has ever released with this symmetrical dagger profile. It's actually just sharp on one side. We're going to talk about that. But absolutely one of the stranger knives that they've released. And definitely there's a lot more going on here than a typical WE knife. I'm going to link this knife down in the description so you guys can check it out if you want to. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much to WE Knives for sending this in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. I realize that I'm one of the last reviewers to actually, upload my review on this knife. I am not super concerned with being first. I like to make sure that I have my thoughts complete, and this one was a real head scratcher for me. I had certain expectations for it, and then I got it, and I was like, is it what I thought it was going to be? And then I got to looking at it, and I'm like, well, there's some other elements here. So this one took a little bit longer, which is why you're getting my review so late. So I just wanted to kind of clarify there. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. The Diatomic is not a huge knife, but it's definitely not a little knife. In fact, it's actually bigger than I thought. This guy comes in at 8.5 inches. I thought for sure it was going to be 8 inches. Blade length is coming in at 3.75, and your cutting edge is about 3.65. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2, which is kind of tucked away there. How about up against the Demco AD 20.5? There it is. Alrighty, how about, you know what, let's do the Civivi Vision FG. I feel like some people might be curious about that, just to get some other WE/Civivi knives in here up against the Elementum, maybe the Spyderco PM2. And you know what, just to kind of finish it up here, let's put it up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue. Alrighty, how's the action on this knife? It's good. It's about the same as every other WE knife that I've ever handled. You can sort of front flip wheel it out this way. Can you actually front flip it? Not really. You can, but I think that's a good way to get stitches in your hand, right? I mean, if you want to tempt fate and, for no other reason than just looking cool by yourself, then you knock yourself out. I'm going to recommend you just use the flipper tab. As is the case with every other symmetrical dagger design, I understand it's not sharp on both sides, so if we're going to specifically label it, some people get really bent out of shape about what you label a dagger. Calm down. It's not that important. As is the case with all of these symmetrical flipper dagger profile knives, once you catch the right flipper tab, you're good. You will inevitably, think of Thanos, accidentally try to flip it on the wrong side at least once. It's just going to happen because when you pick the thing up, there's another complication here. The only indicator that you're on the correct side is which way you're approaching the knife, depending on where the lock bar cutout is. Why is that? Because the thing has two pocket clips. Two pocket clips. On the short, I mentioned that I still could not figure out why they decided to put two clips on there. And as I could have guessed, you had all the people who, they were very observant. Yes. The wisdom unlimited. It's supposed to be ambidextrous, they said. Of course, you fool. Can't you see? It's ambidextrous. Yeah. That is a very smooth brain take. The clip is symmetrical. It will mount on either side, which means if the thing came with one clip, you could still mount it for left or right-handed carry. So, thank you for that assessment, but no. Listen, I have concluded that the double clip thing is just stupid. fine. I would rather have not assumed that I paid for 2 clips because it is completely unnecessary and leaving them both mounted at the same time. Now you can just take one off, right? I'll admit you can take one off, but there are plenty of people who will buy this and just leave both clips on. It just creates a weird grip experience, right? On top of that, it's either way, it's weird, even if you take a clip off, because guess what? The only mounting position for this guy is tip down, which is just wrong for a flipper. It's not comfortable ergonomically, and it is wrong for a flipper. Why? Because when you clip this thing into your pocket, a normal sane person pins the knife up against the back seam of their pocket because you do not want it towards the front seam for obvious reasons, right? I don't care who you are. You don't want this near your goods. That's just common sense, folks. All right. You want it up against the back seam. Well, when you have a flipper up against the back seam, because it's carried like this, anything that bumps your pocket a little bit, it'll take a specific bump, but it could flip this thing a little bit in your pocket, pointing it right towards those goods that we were trying to avoid in the first place. In a tip down configuration, if you're carrying it right-handed and the pocket clip is mounted for correct right-handed carry, the knife is up against the seam, meaning number one, catching the flipper tab to deploy it is much harder given the position of it, and number two, your pocket seam will stop that from happening. That's why. That's why tip down carry does not work with flippers. Now, if that's your preference, stick to thumb stud knives. Now, I'm sure there are plenty of people who have carried tip down carry flipper knives that have never had that issue, but let me tell you, it's not like, oh, it only happened once. Yeah, only what I'm describing there happening one time is catastrophic, right? So that's not something that I want to roll the dice on. I don't carry flipper knives tip down for that exact reason. I am not trying to put the old goods up there on the roulette table. I'm not gonna bet on those on that situation. So that's why, it is a real thing. So either way, it creates a safety issue in the pocket, and either way, it creates ergonomic discomfort. But it is double when we have both clips on here. So the amount of stupid is compounded into this bizarre area. A quick analysis of it's supposed to be ambidextrous is ridiculous. Don't say that to me. It's wrong. That's the nicest way I can put it is that is wrong. So I don't know. I think this was a situation where we was like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we put 2 clips on it? Because it does create for a symmetrical aesthetic. In that case, yeah, I mean, truthfully, outside of all the problems it causes, I will admit it does make it look good on both sides. That was probably the goal. I can't imagine that comfort and safety were were of the utmost importance when designing this thing, outside of not sharpening the other edge. I can understand why. But the pocket clip is officially, as far as this channel is concerned, stupid. So that was the part for me that, I don't know why it took so long for me to come to that conclusion, but that's the conclusion I came to. What on earth, what part of this review are we at? Let's do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. With both clips mounted, it is way thicker. With one clip mounted, it is way thicker. So that's a problem. The frame itself is still thicker than the Para 3, but it's not overall the most uncomfortable thing in the world. I've certainly handled more uncomfortable knives. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. It's honestly about the same length overall as the PM2, which is crazy because it honestly doesn't feel absolutely massive in the pocket. It's really when it's in the hand that it becomes uncomfortable. So in the pocket, it's really not that bad. It's definitely longer than the Para 3, nowhere near as tall, even including both flipper tabs. So I think where I forgot to continue was the action. The action's fine. In fact, it's actually pretty easy to flip. Now it'll take a little bit of encouragement to get it down. I'm sure this will break in continuously, but there's not a lot of mass in the blade assisting it. So it runs on bearings, and you can absolutely use the unsharpened edge to close it. If you, for some reason, turn the knife over and forget, you might go to disengage and not think, oh, this is not the side that disengages, and then just out of muscle memory, move your index finger to the sharpened edge and cut yourself. It sounds silly, but if you were gonna do that, it would be on something like this, right? So you have to keep track of which side that frame lock is on. There is plenty of access to the lock bar, but they did not cut one side lower, obviously to keep it, you know, looking symmetrical. And I get that. It's fine. But there is plenty of access to the lock bar. And honestly, the detent is tuned properly. It's a pretty satisfying flip. So the action I'm going to label as good. Let's do materials. So what are we looking at here? CPM 20CV titanium and more titanium in this butt cap is what I'm going to call this here. So we definitely have premium materials. Do we have any milling on the inside? Actually, yeah, there is a little bit of milling on the inside for weight reduction. Let's go ahead and weigh it. I'm going to guess this weighs about 4.5 ounces. That would be my guess. Nope, it weighs 3.5 ounces. Man, I was way off there. Balance, make another guess here and say it's butt heavy. It is. The balance is actually way back here. So there's a lot more weight. You have titanium, 2 pocket clips for some reason, and then we have a butt cap back here. I know people are going to do their best to oversimplify the pocket clip thing, but that is a fruitless mission. There is just no justification for it. You do your worst in the car. I can't wait to hear. In fact, I'd like to hear a lot of sarcastic, reasons why there are 2 clips. Give me your goofiest reason for 2 clips. I couldn't wait. Those I would actually really like to read, right? But that'll help muddy up the ones who are seriously trying to justify 2 pocket clips. But anyways, let's see here. Let's do let's measure blade stock thickness real quick. I mean, there's not really a good place to grab, because the whole, you know what? I'm actually going to have to do it on the flipper tab. That's going to be the thickest part of the blade. And then you just have to understand it's a continuous taper, like literally from the point where you can classify it as blade, it immediately starts to taper towards the tip. So we're starting with I can't believe that, 155 thousandths, but truthfully, where it starts to taper immediately, it's just immediately like I can't even get a good read on this thing. It's telling me this right here, no way. It's telling me this is 117, 118. So there's a pretty substantial taper immediately. Which is good because there's not a lot of room to drop there towards the cutting edge. And to my knowledge, this is a flat ground blade. So yeah, let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm gonna get out my tools. As usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. I actually don't think that there are any unless... So these screws back here. So here's where you take it apart. Love Them Knives did a disassembly on this where you can go and watch him do that if you want to. But there's a T8 screw right there and a T8 screw right there, and you have to take that butt cap off in order to get in there. So you're going to need a tool like this, right? It's something like this and like these regular bits, they're not going to reach it. You're going to have to get something that'll reach down in there. These screws right here are T6, which is pocket clip and pivot access as far as I understand. It's really not that hard to take apart. I would recommend that you have some sort of plastic pry tool. Mine is missing at the moment. But having one of those plastic lever, like pry tools or like this works. Here's my thin one. I've got 2 different thicknesses. I don't know where the other one is. This works, but it's a little bit too thin for something like this. You're going to want something a little thicker, and you're going to want to twist the frame apart. It will come apart, but it's got one of those pins that sticks it together, and that pin is very tightly fitted. And so whenever something is really tight like that, you have to take extra caution. The times where I've cut myself the worst is when I'm pushing against something and the blade is just not in a very good spot and I end up running my hand across it, right? No matter how careful you are, no matter how practiced you are, that's going to happen, right? So the best thing you can do is mitigate it with the right type of stuff. So the right types of tools. I would recommend picking up one of those little plastic pry bars. Just so you don't screw up you can use a regular, pry bar, but you're going to screw up the titanium. All right, let's go ahead and move into the meat and potatoes. I was actually super hyped for this knife. because I like a symmetrical look. And I was like, this is cool. This is different than what WE has ever done before. It's a little bit different. You're tuning a detent for a symmetrical design. If you take a look at, a lot of folding knives, the edge is on one side. We don't have symmetry, right? So the blade is not the same. The weight of the blade is not identical on either side. So you have to take that into consideration. To get the blade to sink completely and totally into the handle, you have to have the pivot in the middle, right? The blade is going to be symmetrical. So your detent tuning, I would imagine, would be slightly different considering you just have a different balance of materials. Maybe it's not that complicated, but I would imagine that these are things that precision manufacturers, precision OEMs like WE take into consideration. So they did it really well. I was a bit disappointed that we didn't have a sharpened edge on both sides. And for people who want to say you can't do that, it's going to be too close, yes, you can. Let me introduce you to the Sharp by Design Arch Nemesis. If you've never seen this knife before and you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, I'm buying that, I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but this is one of the hardest knives to get your hands on, period. But I want to use it as an example here. It is absolutely sharp on both sides. And because of the way that Brian designed the handle scales, the blade absolutely does sink entirely in there without running the risk of touching it until you get way up here, which is pretty unlikely. I'm not going to be pinching right here with my index fingers, but it absolutely is possible. Now, it could be, number one, of course, the design of the handle doesn't allow for the blade to be perfectly sunk in there without touching it. Because see how they did it on this side? Closed it off, right? There's no way. On this side, if it was sharp, you'd definitely be touching it. Could they have widened the handle out? Yeah. But the limitations might not be just with the design of the handle. It might be that WE Knives is not legally allowed to manufacture a dagger knife in China. I honestly don't know. That wouldn't surprise me at all, right? But that might have been the case. I would really like to see somebody else as far as I know, the only other company that's done a production knife that's sharp on both sides is Hinder Knives. And they have opted for the unsharpened swedged bayonet version of their Maximus ever since the release of the first dagger version of their Maximus. I have not seen a sharpened, a double-sided edge version of that for so long. So really, the only other one that I see consistently, and there might be, maybe there's other ones out there. The only one that I know of that I ever see is the Arch Nemesis, and I'm not. We don't see many of these, so. That would have been cool, but they didn't do it. Now, for an unsharpened area up here, it does look really good. And I do like this little area right here where they flattened it out and they just gave it a little more personality. That line does go right down the middle, and boy, you know what? It's impressive. It starts to sort of favor one side, and that's because it's not because they missed. It's because this side has an edge. It's the exact same way on both sides. Right? That's on purpose. But they made it look really, really good. And I do overall appreciate the look. It looks nice. There's a few different versions of this. Mine was the black wash with the bronze and the glass blasted blade. I think the best version of it, the best looking version, is the one that Love Them Knives got. The all silver, right? No matter which one you go with, they're all very expensive. And I think some of that is justified. Not all of it. This is not a simple sandwich construction knife. The cap that we've got here is like its own wraparound piece. So we have seam construction. We have this titanium cap, which is separate and comes off the back. Is it necessary? No. Could they have made this knife less expensive? If this is where they're going to justify the price, could they have not precision machined this part and just done, seam construction all the way through or pillar construction? Yes. Right? And presumably that would have brought the price down. Because I don't know, unless they're like, hey, it's got 2 clips, that'll be an extra $100, right? Unless that's where they're at, right? I can't find any other part of this knife that really justifies the massive bump in price. And even then, I don't really agree with the price, right? It is cool. It's neat. I've never actually seen this before, this cap end. And it does look good. The whole knife looked good. I can't help but wonder why they didn't just mount the clip right here. Literally put the screws for the clip right here, and it's kind of comes up, and you could have done a wraparound. It could have maintained being a deep carry clip. Or you know what? I would actually take a clip that mounts right here and just deal with this butt sticking up. I mean, fine. I'd still rather have it tipped down, and then just one clip would have been fine, right? And then mill out the holes on the other side so people can, left or right hand carry, whatever. It's a right-handed frame lock, but that would have been nice, right? Is there a lanyard hole? No, there's not. There's no lanyard hole, which is a bummer for 7 total people. The overall machining, fit, and finish on this thing is very, very good. And it is unique in the sense that we've got this sort of butt cap. And I can't think of any other knife in history where they put 2 clips on it, right? So if their goal was to help us remember this thing or somehow market it as that weird knife with 2 clips, then they were successful, right? It's got the little roller things on it, which work okay. When you carry this thing, it actually will sink all the way into the pocket, which is fine. There we go. The stop pin is actually fixed in place, but it's internal. So it rides on a channel carved out of the blade. Still just 1 point of contact. There is no blade play up, down, left, or right. And there is a steel lock bar insert, by the way, doubling as the over travel stop. So that's nice. Action is consistent, but tight. It will wear in. The detent is very good. I mean, we have look at this. That is nice, man. And perfect centering. Just absolutely perfect centering. $391. That's the base price of this. Sorry to slap you in the face. It's like I dipped my hand in hot sauce and slapped you right in the eyeballs with it. Yeah, that's a lot of money. If you're trying to tell me it's the machining on the butt cap and the fact that we've got 2 pocket clips, no. If they wanted $300 for this, maybe $325, I'd have been like, okay, it's really cool. It definitely is one of the most interesting knives that WE has released. It's definitely going to be memorable. I actually will remember it as that weird flipper dagger that had 2 pocket clips, but I don't see $391 here. WE has been really hit or miss with this. Every now and then they release something really great for a totally reasonable price, and then the next day they release something that is no more complicated. It's not just the materials. I understand it's very easy to anchor your sense of value to materials, but you got to get over that. There's more to it, right? The next day, they'll release something with the exact same materials and, more importantly, no more complexity of machining. And they'll be like, yeah, it's an extra $100. Now, listen, if you like this and you want to know, hey, is it built well? Yeah. You got the money and you don't really care about that. You just want to know, is it quality? Is it going to work? Yeah, it's fine. It's just a little quirky. Go ahead, knock yourself out. Buy it. You'll love it. For everybody else, no, it's too much money. There's way too much competition. This is a collector enthusiast knife. If you want to use it, it will function. Absolutely. But this is specifically somebody who just likes to collect oddball stuff and doesn't mind paying the price tag for it. So that's my honest review. Took me a bit. Crazy knife. Cool knife. Not something that I would pay $391 for. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.